this one. I'm a really practical person, but God just challenged me then to open in prayer. You can't be the only spiritual one, Dave. Oh, I'm kidding. Lord, we just pray for your spirit of anointing to settle in this place. The Lord, as we talk about business and strategy and practical things, that you would invade the space with supernatural wisdom, understanding for everyone here. That you would bring a peace as well if people are struggling, and you would bring a confidence in their heart that you have got them. In Jesus' name, amen. Homework. You all thought I'd forgotten, didn't you? I did actually, to be honest. I thought I'd better pick it up. Okay. We might have time just for a couple of people to answer these. So what's one small thing you can change immediately today or create more wealth for tomorrow? Who wants to answer that one? What they came up with.
I just had increased fees and just have a real good look at the frivolous expenses that are happening.
Did you say increased fees?
Yeah.
Good. Yep.
Your mentors have been telling you that for ages. And from what we learned yesterday, value my worth.
Value, yes.
Yeah.
Charge what you're worth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
come on.
and cut out frivolous expenses.
Okay. Anyone else want to answer that one?
I just put build a buffer for emergencies.
Excellent. Yep. Build a buffer. Okay, second question. How can you get better at tracking your finances in business? What can you do if you're not already? What's one thing? Did anyone come up with that?
Balance sheet and CFO. Is that the question?
How can I get better at tracking my finances in business?
So using balance sheet.
Mm-hmm. Well, understanding it?
Understanding.
Yep.
Calling on a CFO.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Anyone else? Yes.
I think we need to use that info you gave us about cash flow and things. We've got one company that finances 3 other companies that are startups, and so if we do those figures with our accountants and do it across the 4 companies, it'll probably make life easier for us.
Definitely will. Yep, for sure. You can use software to do that. Consolidation. Yeah. Okay, what's one income producing asset, like a large one, you'd like to invest in the next 1 to 5 years? Anyone think of that?
I thought maybe investing or buying a share in a complementary business, like mortgage brokering, but maybe in a conveyancing business or financial planning business, and a sharing clients.
That's a good one. I like that.
What I plan to do is get moving on plans that I've got at the moment for a duplex, and then to repeat the design. I believe I've got a pretty good design that could benefit maybe homeless women moving forward, and I want to replicate the design, so I want to do more of that once I get moving. That's my plan.
Excellent. Right, drum roll for the winner of Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Whoa.
Nicole. Yep. I assume you haven't read it. It's okay. Did we just have that first slide with the download thingamy on it, please? Okay, this was meant to be in the last slides, but we had a bit of technical difficulty. So this is a downloadable resource that talks about what a chief financial or outsourced chief financial officer is and does. It's probably about 15 pages long, so it's good to take home and read. So you're quite welcome to scan that and do that. And there's another download at the end of this one, but we'll get to that. Now, has everyone got their little sheets here? Their little worksheets? Yep. Everyone got their pen? Did everyone get a pen today or yesterday? One of my pens? It's in the car.
It's sold it on eBay last
Yes.
night.
Okay, so next slide. Thanks, guys. And if you didn't get that, Dave can email you the link. Yep. Proverbs 29:18. Where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keeps the law, happy is he. Who's heard that scripture before? Without a vision, the people perish. And God's design for business is not unlike his design for us. That we prosper, that we flourish. He doesn't say it's going to be easy or that we won't face obstacles, trials or challenges. But he says that his plans for us are good and not evil, and that all things work together for good to those who love the Lord. So if that's true for us, then it's got to be true for business. Who agrees with that? Yeah? So if we're the founder of our business, then these biblical truths apply to the company the same as they do to us. Who knows that a company is not unlike a person? I'm not getting weird on you. How are they similar? Well, they are taxed differently, true, but they are similar because, I'll just bear with me because you're probably going to think this is a bit strange, but I'm going somewhere with this. They can have a bank account, they can trade and transact as a business, they can buy and sell property and shares, they can have a tax file number, an ABN, a GST, they pay taxes. The only two entities that pay taxes in Australia are a person and a company. Okay? Can sign and enter into contracts, and they have a birth date and a death date. Sounds weird, doesn't it? But it's true. What can a company not do that a person can? Sorry? But legal things, like it can't marry or have children, right? But it's funny because this is in the law. Like a company can't marry. It can do everything that the law says, that a company can do everything that a natural person can do except marry or have children. And of course it can't have an intelligent spiritual relationship with God, can it? But the point is, a natural person has to control the company, don't they? Company doesn't exist without people. So that means that they're responsible for the financial outcomes that it has. We can't say, oh, but the business is over here and it's because of all these external type factors. It's the director or the people, the CEO that are running it. They're the ones that are responsible. Anyway, I just wanted to open with that, just to sort of... Okay, so today we're going to talk about a business fitness. Now, that's me. Quite a few years ago now. I still use it though. That was my last marathon, 2015. And that's New York. That's the New York Marathon. That's First Avenue, I think. It's a very, very long avenue because it was a 30k mark. And if anyone's ever done long distance running or marathons, the marathon starts at 30k's because the last 12 are really hard. But when we talk about health and fitness, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Physical, mental, emotional. It's our humanity. Do you know that 1 in 3 businesses fail in the first 3 years? We've probably all heard that. That's I don't think that stat's changed for years. It could be higher these days, I don't know. But why is that? Why do you think 1 in 3 businesses fail in the first 3 years? Lack of knowledge? Lack of planning? Yep. Is it government regulation? Is it economic?
Didn't start with enough cash.
Didn't start with enough cash.
Perseverance.
Sorry?
Perseverance.
Persevere. Well, yeah. Harder than you thought, yeah. And we think of all those external factors that impact, but what about the internal ones? What about the stuff going on inside the business? The decisions of leadership teams and the staff? they all affect the outcomes on the day-to-day basis, don't they? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about strategy and the internal workings of the business. And I call this business fitness. So remember we talked about balance sheets and that was the financial health, or this is strategy. This is the internal business health. And what I use is this thing called business fitness. So think about that, FITNESS, and we're going to go through the 7 areas that you need to create a great business strategy. And the finance, the culture and the systems in your business all need to be working properly and in tip-top shape if we're going to have a healthy level of sustainability, right? Who'd agree with that? Finance, culture, systems. All those 3 things need to be working well together if you're going to be viable, sustainable, grow, or even stay at the level you're at. So when you do a marathon, you actually have to train your body to endure the stress that you're going to put on it in that marathon. You don't run marathons to train for marathons, right? You do incremental. So if you don't run at all, you start at 1 kilometre, don't you? And by the time, if you have never done any running, it would take you 12 months to train for a marathon. If you've done none today, you wouldn't be able to do one for a year, unless you're really well, unless you're 18 or something, you might be able to. I don't know, but I don't think anyone in this room is. So I had to actually put good food into my body. I had to train, to get up early, put in the kilometres. And there's also an emotional, mental fitness required for that as well. Of course, when we talk about healing and how God heals people, in 2010 I had a nervous breakdown because I was going through a divorce, and I had 3 years of very deep, dark depression due to that divorce. And God saved me, but marathons saved me too, because, and it's a scientific fact that physical activity helps delete or even remove depression. And it did, because training runs, long training runs, you're all in your head. And when it starts to hurt, you've got to pull on all of your, you're going to be praying. I was praying, God help me. So business isn't any different. We've got to train, we've got to put in time, we've got to put in effort. Who here feels like they run a marathon every day in business? Sometimes you do, don't you? Sometimes it feels like that. Sometimes you feel like, I just want to delete today and start tomorrow, Someone said that to me the other day, actually my running group, he runs a bookstore, and he said, there was just so many horrible, weird, crazy things that happened today. I just wanted to go home to bed at 12 o'clock and delete the day and get back tomorrow. Okay, so why do businesses fail? We're going to go through 5 reasons that businesses fail. And we've talked about quite a lot of these in the last couple of days. And we've talked extensively about cash flow issues, so we all know that. But in a nutshell, businesses fail because of all the things that we've talked about, like tight margins and not reviewing prices, people not knowing their numbers, not reviewing reports, poor financial management, that sort of stuff. No budgets and cash flow. So this is a big, we've got no customers and run out of cash. Well, we don't have a business, do we? Debtors blow out. So that's why businesses fail. The first reason. Just go to the next slide, and then all those, we're going to go through those other ones there. Bad tech and systems too, because again, if you can't extract meaningful data and reports, you can't make meaningful decisions. Number 2 is lack of purpose and why. And I haven't touched on this yet, but we're going to get into it. It actually blows me away by the amount of organisations I've worked with that actually don't really have a clear purpose and why. And again, it's not limited to Christians or non-Christians. It's not just service-based business or product businesses. Remember I told you that story about the window furnishing manufacturer? I worked with him for quite a few years, and we did a full day strategic planning with him and his senior sort of people a few years back. And when I do these, I send out a survey like for the CEO and then for the staff, just asking questions like, what do you think the vision and mission of the business is? Do you have access to training? Do you know how to do your job properly? Just stuff like that. And we did this survey and he probably had 15 staff, I reckon. The answer that these people wrote down was to get jobs done and out the door as quickly as possible. Right? Yeah, like, what do you know? The question was, do you know what the vision or mission of the business is? And it was nothing about quality or service or products or customer satisfaction, or it was Australian owned, or you know that we wanted to be the best in South Australia, or it was nothing. It was nothing like that. And I sat down and I said to him, you know, that's not a great answer that your people are making. Yeah. But you know why they wrote that? Because that's the message that he was sending them. And he was just, you know, and I advised him to start having staff meetings a few months before this because they weren't having any. So he's getting into these staff meetings and going, right, we've got all this work coming in, we've got to get jobs out as quickly as possible. Look at it on the whiteboard, you know, we're getting behind, we can't be, you know, if someone orders an awning, it's got to be out 4 weeks, you know. And there's a place for that. Like, of course there's a place for that. But there was nothing about where the business was going, what the mission, you know. And the consequence of that is he had staff problems. So, and even non-profits, like you would think that non-profits would actually be more hot on this, you know, they'd be more clear on it because they're like, we want to help people. Like if you ask any non-profit director or CEO, they go, I want to help people. But I was a treasurer of one last year and you know, they worked in the child protection space, but they weren't really clear on who they was, well they were helping parents navigate the child protection system, right? But they weren't really clear on their messaging or their why or their purpose, and the consequence of that was that they didn't attract sponsors and donations and all the stuff that they needed. So without an overarching purpose and why, we're going to lack motivation too, really, because everyone just becomes complacent, they get stuck, status quo, no one's generating new ideas, there's no plan to follow. Does everyone know what their vision, mission and purpose is here? Yeah? We all pretty sure? Not sure. Okay, what's the other reason they fail? 3 is lack of or no processes and procedures. Okay, so you just mentioned McDonald's, Dave, but you know, think McDonald's. Like, even if you're an SME, you can think like McDonald's. You're not going to get to that level, right? But you can still think like that because, I don't know about you, but my kids, Dave, both worked in McDonald's. My girls are 22 and 24 now. When they were 14, 15, 16, my daughter was actually, I think she was 17 or 18, she was a manager in one of the McDonald's, you know. And she learnt so much about systems and processes and policies and procedures, and she then went on to do other hospitality jobs, but they used to just like snap her up straight away. She's like, McDonald's training, you know. You know, if you've got no checklists or nothing for people to follow or latch onto, then they're all just going to come in and do it their way. If you don't say, this is how McDonald's goes, this is how we do it here, if you don't have that in your business either, then, you know, you're probably going to churn through staff as well because no one's really going to know what's going on, what they're meant to be doing. And just having that uniform way of doing things. Because who knows that training or taking on new staff is a costly exercise. Me and Nathaniel were just having a conversation about that. Time and money. You know, if you're a small operation and you have to train someone in the same job every 6 months or so, that's exhausting, you know. So when we talk about ops manuals and stuff like that, we all think, oh, big 20 page, but you know, these days an ops manual are a 20 set of videos in your OneDrive, or you know, they don't have to be paper, they don't have to be Word documents, just film them. Number 4, disengaged employees. So when we've got no plan and no processes, this can contribute to this sort of thing. You know, there's a stat that says that less than 31% of employees in the workplace are actually motivated and engaged. That's quite shocking, really. That means that 70% aren't. They're all just going through the motions. But you know, we've got to work from the ground up to guarantee that we're profitable, that we've got saleability too. Someone was talking to me about businesses scaling or being saleable, you know, preparing for sale. And we should always be thinking that, shouldn't we? That our business, can we sell it one day? Who thinks they've got a business here that's an asset they could sell one day? 2? Anyone else? No one's got a business here they could sell? Like if you're like me and Dave, if you're a consultant, that's not what it is, right? Because we're the brand. But if you've got any sort of product of like HR or IT or who's the music lady, she's gone, has she?
Yeah.
You know, that's a saleable business. A mortgage broker is saleable, bookkeeping is a saleable business, plumbing, electrician, software, that they're all potentially saleable businesses because you've got that goodwill factor. So, and having good staff is part of that too, because when someone comes to look at your business to buy, they're not just going to look at numbers, they're going to look at your processes, procedures, they're probably going to look at your staff if they're doing their due diligence and they know what they're doing. They don't want to hire a whole lot of unmotivated people, do they? So we should always be thinking about that. And that window manufacturer, you know, he wasn't a touchy-feely person, let's put it that way. So he was a really good guy to work with, and I always pushed back on him. He liked the banter. But he didn't ever, you know, give people feedback or praise. He told them, oh, you're not doing that, you're not, you know, that's wrong, this is wrong. But he didn't give them any feedback or praise. So, hey, Joe, you're doing a really good job there. That's how we motivate people too. Some people just want to be, you know that they're contributing and that they're actually valued. It could be just, you know, tap them on the shoulder. It could be a 5-second thing. You're doing a great job. When you don't do that, people just get disgruntled as well. Okay, number 5. Okay, implementation. This is my favourite one. Lots of companies will do strategy or do strategic plans, so they'll have this big 20-document PowerPoint or whatever, and they have their yearly, some might have 6-monthly strategy meetings with senior teams and stuff like that. It's all good, but it all falls over with implementation. Because, and especially in smaller organisations, because what does the CEO do? They get too caught up doing all the stuff. They don't delegate well. Who's ever micromanaged anyone or been micromanaged before? You know, we've probably all been on the other end of it, you know. And so if you've been on the other end of that, you don't want to do it. Someone doesn't want you sitting there going, oh, what are you doing all the time? You know, there's no trust there. And that's why people get stuck on not implementing well, not delegating well either. Some people actually delegate too much without telling the person how to do that job well, and then it all goes. I've seen someone in a cafe, she gave the responsibility of rostering to a team member, and because they didn't do it right, she actually took it back. Now, reverse delegating, again, you're breaking trust because that person's going, well, you don't trust me now. So we've got to prioritise time to work on our business. And I know that, again, that term's probably overused as well, but it's true because if we're constantly on the tools, whether that's a drill or a computer, we've got no headspace and no time for planning. We've got no roadmap. We've got no vision or mission, no roadmap. Me driving around Terrigal, Gosford, etc., like I had to have my Google Maps on because I don't know this area. Like every time I go to and fro, and then when I go back to Sydney, I've got to have my Google Map on. Otherwise, you know, I'm going to get to Canberra or something. I don't know. But it's the same. It's like a roadmap, and we constantly get caught up in day to day. We're never going to have time for strategy. We're never going to execute well. And executing poorly can actually be worse than even just doing nothing. And, you know, if employees too don't really, they're just coming in, grinding out the work, and they don't feel like there's any future or where the business is going, and they just see the CEO just chasing their tail constantly, or, you know, they're going to kind of, I've seen this, they're going to, you know, practice what they preach to. They're going to follow what the CEO does. If they're always chasing their tail, then that's what the employees are going to do. So that was my sort of 5 why businesses fail. Does anyone want to write down a key takeaway just from that bit before we get on to the next bit? Happy? Everyone awake still? You haven't got the 3 o'clock like blood sugar crash or something? No, we're good. It's only 2. Oh, Dave, you'll get them when they're crashing. You get the crash. Okay, next one. Okay, so business fitness. We've all got our PDFs there. We've got our pens. We're going to write in the little boxes. Ooh, this is fun, isn't it? We get to write in little boxes. So the first one, who can guess what the first one is? It's F. Financial, yes. Good job, Nicole. So I'm a numbers nerd, as you probably guessed. But because, again, this is important. This filters into every area. We've got to be on top of our finances. We've got to be financially literate. And like Dave mentioned before, you don't have to have an accounting degree or a financial degree. You don't need to, but you've got to be literate. So most of us here aren't English teachers and don't edit books. We probably write them, we don't edit them, but we know how to write. Okay, so that means we're literate in terms of English, right? But financially literate means the same thing. You just need to know those basic things instead of just guessing it or winging it. I think you said winging it, didn't you? Don't just wing it. So the next one is I. Well, it's I and C actually. It's 2 words. So what are the 2? What's that? We did talk about it before.
So where do we write it?
Anyway, you can just write this here. So write F. We write it in the circle. Financial. So there should be FITNESS, and then there's one last one that I'm going to surprise you with. So just write financial in the first one. I and C is internal controls. I know that's a bit of left field, but again, it's about the McDonald's. It's about having those ops manuals. I worked with it was a non-profit, but it was a $5 million company that worked in the affordable housing space. And they got me to come in with their 2 finance people, and he kind of wanted me to check up on them, I suppose, to see if they were doing the right thing. And actually, this is you probably think I've given you all these bad news stories. It feels like it. And I went in there, sat with the finance team for probably a couple of months every week, just went in there. And their financial controls were like second to none. And these people weren't even accountants. They just learned on the job and been there for 11 years. And they had to be stitched up because they were reportable to like ACNC, some other building thing, and like they were reportable to and a board. And so I went back to the general manager after a few months and I said, look, I wrote up a big report and I said, these guys, these 2, one was a lady, I said, they know what they're doing, all right? And they don't probably want someone like me looking over their shoulder. Although they knew I wasn't trying to take their job. I said, I don't want your job. And I said, your biggest risk is that they leave and you've got no ops manual. Now, like to me, I thought to myself, I've got to give him something. Like I was sitting there in my office and I've got to give him a report. I've just charged this guy, like $4 or $5 grand or something to go in there. I've got to give him, I was trying to be smart. And then when I wrote this up about we sat down and had coffee. I said, did you go through my report? He goes, you know what, Sarah, I thought that was gold. I've never thought of that. But it was because these two people that are in there are on the end, you know, without being disrespectful, they're on the pointy end of retirement. You know, they're late 50s, early 60s, so they're all thinking about caravans. And if they leave, yeah, that's right. And they told me that, you know, no, or if one of them got sick or whatever, there's no way of. And I said to him that, so he's like, well, can you just come in and write those procedures? I'm like, all right, well, this is how much it's going to cost. And so I don't mind doing it. I just said to him, I'll just sit there with them, you know, and write. I've written them for my accounting firm too. But internal controls is a big thing because there's risk attached to that. If you don't have those things in place, again, it's like reinventing the wheel all over again. Has anyone got any questions? I'm going to run out of saliva. You all good? Everyone good? You still awake? So, you know, we need to have a business plan too that's regularly reviewed. So when we're doing strategy and we turn that into a business plan, it's got to be reviewed. It's got to be looked at. It's not just print out, put it in the desk, and that's it. And also things like workplace policies, work health and safety, that's all to do with internal controls. That's what we called, these things here are called how we create a well-oiled machine in terms of business. All right, T is, next one. No. Training, that's it. So, training, and again, this might seem simple, but lots of business owners don't train their staff. What's that saying? What if I spend all this money, train these people, and they leave? Or what if you don't train them and they stay? You know, that's worse, isn't it? You know. But it's underestimated in small business, and especially for the CEO, because they need people like Dave, right? Just to just go in and tell them where it's at, whether that's a spiritual thing or just challenging people in a boardroom. You know, I went and saw a speaker on Monday night because I'm part of the Professional Speakers Association, and we have speakers come in. And this guy said he was doing a 2-day strategy meeting with like a big corporate. And he's a funny guy because he's like a doctor, and I think he's a he's an NLP, and he's a human behavioural, and he's really quirky. Anyway, he goes, day one, they were all acting like teenagers and kids, fighting, blah, blah, you did this, you did that. This is senior management of like a $100 million company, right? And so he tried to navigate that. Anyway, the next day he had an idea. So he got dressed. He's a skinny guy, he's a marathoner, so he's not, you know, if you can imagine this, black leathers, like bikey leathers. He goes, I dressed in black bikey leathers, put my helmet on, and he sat in the middle of the boardroom table. When all these senior managers walked in, they all just went, what is he doing? Anyway, they all sat down and he goes, right, he did swear, I won't do it, but you'll get the idea. He goes, right, are we going to do some adulting today and get some strategy going, or am I going to go for a ride? And they all just went, yeah, I think we'll pull up our socks and, you know. I just thought of that, and it was so funny the way that he said it. Imagine that in a boardroom, this bloke's in black leather. So, you know, training and development is really important. And it doesn't matter whether it's the CEO or it doesn't matter whether it's hospitality or even financial services. I mean, there's more onerous, CPD requirements for like accountants and lawyers and those other sort of industries. But even if they're not, you should still be, you know, don't do CPD for the sake of it. Do it because you want to learn. Okay, so we've got F, finances, I, internal controls, T's, training. What's N? Numbers. So we're not talking about money, although we could be, they're all linked. But things like non-financial KPIs, and is it Steve? Software guy. Yeah, I think you were talking about this yesterday, you know, like KPIs about how many leads are coming in, or customer loyalty, retention, appointments, percentage of sales from top 5 clients. Who knows what that's all about? Does anyone guess? So,
Pareto.
what's that, sorry?
Pareto principle.
Yeah, 80-20, yeah. I had a client that was like industrial blasting. They used to clean bitumen machines, right? And these guys too, they just like, oh, we're working for someone, we'll just go on our own and do it. And within a year or two, they'd turn over $1 million. And they only had 2 clients, you know? And I know that they probably had to starting out, but I kept saying to them, you know, guys, this is a risk. Like if one leaves, you just lost half your revenue. So we need to keep track of that type of thing, because I think even if you've got 100 clients, you could still be getting only your 95% of your revenue from 5% of them. And that's a good metric to check too, those sort of numbers. And appointments coming in. Like if you're a hairdresser, wouldn't you want to track the number of appointments that you've got every week? How many phone calls have been, you know, inquiries you've got, stuff like that. I think John Maxwell said what gets measured gets done, and what gets measured and fed back gets done well, and what gets rewarded gets repeated. And that's about, you know, staff motivation as well. Okay, numbers, so E, what's E? Write down E. Environment. Yep, so physical location, mission, vision, values, I mean that's an environment, it's not a physical one. Culture, that's an environment. You go into a place, you can sort of kind of go, oh, this culture, is it good or bad? But even physical too, like if you're a mechanic, you know, to be honest, there's no excuse for having a dirty office where most of your people come in, is there? Who would go back to a mechanic that's got an office with all dirt and grease and papers, and even an accountant? I've been into accountants' offices, see, like, the accountants are classic for putting files on the ground, like that. I've seen them piled high, and lawyers. Do you go back to that person? You probably go, oh, they're a bit disorganised, aren't they? So having a warm, friendly, accessible, reliable environment. Is that impacts people, it impacts your staff. I always say, messy desk, messy head. If you work in an office and you've got papers and rubbish everywhere, messy, you know, you get overwhelmed. I know even in my office, when I get a bit messy, I'm thinking, oh God, where do I start? And then I go, oh, hang on, it's because it's messy.
Yeah.
You have to remind yourself, don't you? Okay, we'll just quickly run through these. So S, there's 2 S's. Systems, yep. So having software and hardware, and like I said before, having systems that are connected, not disconnected. Having Xero and Mind connected to those apps, like timesheet apps and things like that you need, is really important. Document management. Internal communications. Using sales and marketing software as well, because having the right tools in an office is just as important as the tools that a plumber or electrician needs. You can't do your job if you don't have them. You know, who doesn't use accounting software? Who's still doing spreadsheets? No one? Okay, good. Because even if you're a startup, you should still be using even something like, Nicole might correct me on this, QuickBooks. No? Yes?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, okay. Because QuickBooks is a really simple startup accounting software. It only costs like, I think, $200 a year. Yeah, $200 or $300 a year. Now, if you're turning over more than about 10 grand, you can probably afford that. Using project management, who's done a project management type, uses a tool like that in their business? Like Trello, Asana, those sort of things. I mean, I use that for people to track strategic planning. So when I go in there to a day of strategic planning, it all goes into Trello. I don't know if you know what a Kanban, it's got all the boards, you know, and it has everything that we talked about, jobs, projects. So not just document management, project management. Because people say to me, oh, but I've got OneDrive or Google Drive. I said, yeah, that's document management. Trello is project management to track what you're doing. And if you're a bigger organisation, you're going to have some really big fancy type thing. But for people that are smaller, that's free. that software. And using email and Outlook for that is not good. I have a love-hate relationship with email. Okay, last one is S. Last S. You can guess what that one is. Close. Stakeholders, and I've called it that because it encapsulates all of those people. So, staff issues, as we know, are probably the number one challenge that business owners face and will continue to face, no matter what industry. So, we've got to invest in people. We've got to get, anyone heard the term, we've got to get the right people on the right seats on the bus. Because if you've got the seat wrong and the person wrong, or the other way around, it's not going to go well. And it all filters into customers and suppliers and how you treat them and building that high performance culture. It's important to, have competent, experienced people. But again, if you're in the wrong position in the company, then they're not going to perform well, are they? And communication in that too is like, I heard someone say once, assumptions are the termites of relationships. They even, who can think about that in their marriage? Especially men and women, like, the woman assumes something and the man's thinking completely opposite, and we should never assume, should we? I always say to my kids, don't ever assume that you know what someone else is going through. So we've got to have, clear job roles and descriptions and written processes, procedures, training, all of that stuff for stakeholders. It's really, really important. Okay, I'm nearly out of time, aren't I? So that's my take on business fitness. The last one, actually, has everyone got one space left? Okay. Got one space left, have you? It's you. So it's business fitnessy. But I put that in there. I used to do this presentation a few years ago, and I put this in there because I thought, if it's the CEO and the director I'm talking to, it's you. You've got to take care of yourself. The mindset. That's why Dave runs these things. Like last time we had Simone Leslie about mindset. It's so important because the world will bring you down with all the negative stuff. But you've got to look after yourself. You've got to, one of my coaches used to say that he spent $200 or $400 a month on nutrition and training and stuff. And people think, gee, that's a lot of money. But it's not. If you're going to be high performing and you want a business that's growing and you need the energy, you've got to put the right stuff in. And you've got to feed your soul and your mindset and, be financially literate. You've got to invest in you. You've got to invest in you. Who agrees with that? You got to. Because someone wrote a book once called The Body Keeps the Score. Now, I haven't read it, but I've read little bits of it, and it's undeniable that God created our bodies to keep the score. God created complex bodies. Probably even if we're a doctor, you probably never understand how they work.
Dutch guy.
The body keeps the score. Yeah. I think you need to take 6 months to read it because it's quite hefty. But it's just how physical things impact emotionally and stuff like that. Okay. So, I know I'm running out of time. I'm sorry, because this presentation I usually do is more than an hour, so I apologise. Does anyone want to just take 5, because this might just take a little bit longer, is that all right? This last bit. Does anyone want to just take a minute and ask questions, or you're all good? Yep, okay. So what I come up with is a 7-point strategic plan, and that's this other funny one I've got here. Just to try and give you an overview of like what I would do in a strategic meeting or plan and what you kind of go through. And so I want you to write down what they are. So MVV, who's heard of MVV? Mission, vision, values. And I think that all of those go together. I think you've always got to start with values and work back. because everyone kind of goes, oh yeah, I know what the mission is, but, you know, and everyone's probably got a vision, you know, some sort of vision, because they'd have to, otherwise they would never have started as an entrepreneur anyway, would they? But if we're not clear on those three areas, we can't steer the ship in the right direction. So mission, vision, values, you know, and in December I did one for it was a non-profit, and it was like an economic leaders type organisation that helped connect business with government and industry and think things like circular economies and recycling and all of that. So, but they were so unclear on what their mission and vision was. It took this was a 3-hour one, I condensed it. It took 45 minutes just to land on, hey, are we in this space or are we in that one? So we've got to, it's important. Okay, the next one is KC, and that's key capabilities. And when we're talking about strategy, you need to actually drill down into what your organisation's capabilities are. Okay, when I say that, they're like key intangible assets. So intangible assets inside your company. You can't touch them, but they make all the difference in the world. And I can actually give you there's a Harvard Business Review document I can actually give you to download that talks about examples of what key capabilities are. I don't have the time to go through, but it's like collective skills. What are the abilities? What's the expertise inside your organisation? And this is something that I think business plans miss, that strategy drills down into. And they're all about outcomes of investing in staff, training, communication, and all those human resource type areas. And the reason let's say an example, how you would write your key capabilities for your business. Our company is good at attracting, motivating, and retaining competent people. We're good at making important changes rapidly. So it's not about market, it's about internal. And what are those, and a lot of people would find this quite hard because they don't want to look internally in their business to see what they're good at. Sounds silly, doesn't it? We are good at obtaining high performance from employees. We are good at generating ideas. You're drilling down into what you're really, really good at internally. So it's important to do that before you even get into writing a business plan. I had an NDIS place approach me in December, and they needed a business plan just for audit purposes, so those guys all get audited. They said, I think they came to the end of November, they said, we need a business plan by the 21st of December. So that's 3 weeks. And the first thing someone referred me to them, the first thing they did was when I went into their office, is she sat down and she just said, this is the business plan here. I said, well, that's the last thing that we're going to do. We need to have a whole day strategy to actually work out what we're going to put in there. And luckily they were all for it, but you don't want to just do that to tick a box. Because what they actually Googled to find someone like me was business plan writer. And they said, nothing came up. I said, I don't think we would call ourselves that. I think we'd call ourselves strategy business advisor or strategist or consultant or something. Okay, SWOT, that's a giveaway. Who knows what that one is? SWOT. Does anyone not know what SWOT is? Okay, so it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And we need to do this in our business so that we know this is about internal and external. So strengths and weaknesses are about internal, opportunities and threats are about external. And it's a really good exercise, and it's an old one, but it's a good one. Then we got IC, sorry I'm trying to rush through so we're not. We've got ideal clients. This is, ideal clients is linked to mission, vision and stuff too. And lots of people don't know who the ideal client is. I've asked a lot of businesses and they just go, everyone's our client. Everyone. If you're selling curtains and blinds, everyone buys them. If you're a bookkeeper, every business is one. But are they? You've got to be clear on that, because not everyone is your client. People. We go through efficiency and happiness and productivity and innovation of your people. we need to articulate what sort of people we want in our organisation when we're doing a plan. What are their roles and responsibilities? An org chart. You know, if you're going, oh, I'm too busy, I need to hire someone, you'd be surprised at how many people just put an ad on Seek without actually sitting down and going, hang on, what do I need that person to do? What can I give them that I'm doing now? They just go, oh, admin, they're going to do, you know, they don't sit down and take the time to actually think about, again, the right person in the right seat on the bus. So we've got to do that in our strategy. An org chart, like you can have one that's a future planning, or you can have one that's current as well, so that you're planning ahead. G is goals. We always go through goals and strategy. And having financial goals and non-monetary goals and personal goals too. So normally I would go through with the CEO, like privately, what their personal goals are, but it's also going to be linked into the business too, isn't it? Because, you know, otherwise the business will take, you know, every business owner knows the business will take over if you let it. It will take over your life, your friends, your family, your kids. It will take over if you let it. So if we've got some sort of goals in mind for family time as well, or you know, even stuff like scheduling holidays into your calendar, you've got to do it, don't you? And the last one is process. So when we've done a strategic plan, go through all of that stuff, you've got to actually have some actions, don't you? You've got to have goals, but you've got to have, all right, how are we going to actually implement this stuff? And that's where we bring that project management system in, having people who are champions of certain areas. Because who knows, Steve, I'll give you an example, software, right? Because I've seen this go wrong.
Yeah.
I'm a big company, I come to Steve and go, oh, we need a big new CRM to service our manufacturing plant and clients, and you need to build it industry specific, and you just come and do it. Now, I suspect that you are going to go, right, well, number one, we need a project manager and a change manager, and who's going to be the champion? And they just, oh, no, you do it. No. It doesn't work like that, does it? You've got to, if you want staff on board, someone's got to be the champion of those areas that you want changes affected. And that's how we get to me reiterating that implementation is the biggest barrier to success of all of this stuff. If you can't implement well and you can't delegate well, it's all just going to be a waste of time. So that is all I had. I know that went a bit over time. I apologise, Dave, but that was an hour one, and I wasn't trying to put everyone to sleep. I hope you're not. But if you want to go through any of those, if we've got 5 minutes, over to you. And there is a download. So this is a workbook, and it's got a whole lot of questions in it based on that fitness model that you can download, print out, fill in your own time.